when I look at this from like the sports talk angle, this is something that I've talked about a lot. And even before NIL was a thing, but like the idea of NIL coming into play in college athletics is there's the market, because it is new, hasn't settled yet. Right. And like I always knew that when the NCAA let go of the reins, there was going to be a couple of years where everyone went nuts. Where it's like, we can pay people now. And you have people coming out of the woodwork and boosters and, you know, people that have kind of been doing this underground for a long time that are now like, we get to do this above ground. Let's party.
Right.
And until the market set, but like what was not going to happen is some massive sea change forever, because 5 years in, 6 years in, 10 years in, they're not going to want to keep paying kids. Like eventually the money runs out. Like, and you go, is this a good investment? Is this worth it to me? Yeah. And so the money that happened when it was under the table, which let's be very clear, a lot of stuff was happening under the table, is just very different. And I think the value piece is what's really important to like this conversation and like the fitness side of it is like, from a business perspective, your training services to college athletes are very valuable. To give that away in order to hopefully make more on that, you're speaking to a very limited market.
Right.
And so unless you have some crazy hotbed of talent where there's a bunch of kids available that are willing to pay, you're never going to get that return on investment. Now, is it worth it to be known as a place that trains college and pro athletes? Yeah, because a bunch of high school kids will pay for that. But is it worth 40 to 50 grand in training that you're going to make back, and then ultimately more than that you're going to have a return on the investment that's positive? No way.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like, look, there's been very few athletes in the history of the NCAA. Like, you could point to somebody like a Zion Williamson who might be worth something like that, where like Zion Williamson is actually selling shoes at the time that he's at Duke, right? Like, there's been some personalities like that, but
unfortunately for Duke and Nike, who's selling Adidas shoes because he blew out the Nike one.
Right. But for the most part, most athletes aren't moving product, right? Like people aren't going to the stores and buying product because their favorite athlete endorses it or whatever. Now, it's different. What has happened in the NIL is you've created opportunities for somebody like the Cavender twins who play basketball, but they have a legitimate business and following that they've built through social media, whether it's TikTok or YouTube. So they've signed $1 million deals with these media companies because they actually have a legitimate business that they've built up. You know, I can think of the kicker who is known as D-Loading, who's a YouTuber now. He was a kicker at UCF, and he stopped kicking because he was like, look, I make way more money on YouTube than I probably would ever make on the NFL. So I'm going to stop kicking. So now we have those opportunities where, you know, that's one side of the NIL. The other side of the NIL is, like what you said, a lot of those backroom deals that were happening before are just now happening out in the open, where
especially with the car dealerships.
Right, the car dealerships, the boosters for the schools that's going to pay a kid a certain amount of money, and you know, if you're going to come to Alabama or Texas A&M, then here's what you're going to get. And then you have other NIL deals, which is what we're working on now. You know, because again, I wanted to be fair. If there's an opportunity for somebody to help make themselves money and make us money, sure, we can partner in that, or we can bring you on as an ambassador. Skills has done this as well. You can be an ambassador for a brand, and anybody that uses your code. So, I mean, full disclosure, this is how you and I work with some of the brands that we're sponsored by, right?
Right.
We have ambassador codes where, hey, you use this code, you're going to get credit, and we'll pay you for that. That's an easy NIL deal to set up, right?
It's a revenue share model versus
Correct.
Like if you bring us extra money, then you
That's
get
easy.
some of that money.
Yeah,
but we're not going to pay you up front.
That's exactly right.
To represent us. And by the way, that gets into an interesting conversation as well. And like when we were smaller, we had some deals like this where there wasn't even a rev share. It's like, yeah, we have like. We've done like 4 episodes. If you give us free stuff, we'll talk about it on the podcast, right? Like in that same way, like obviously in a much more mature level, if you're willing to give your services for free to a higher profile college athlete, that I feel like I could justify if I was trying to build a brand and a reputation as a place where high level college athletes trained, right? Like if you are like, hey, insert athlete here, come, we will train you. You won't have to pay for it. But we're going to get to use, like we get to take the pictures and the videos in the session and put it on our social media. And that is how we'll get a fair marketing agreement. We're not going to pay you any extra cash. You're going to save money by the fact that you're not paying me, a very highly compensated trainer in every other circumstance, for my services. and thus it is a win-win for both parties. Now, obviously, each individual trainer out there, and I'm not putting that on you because you're with your 15 years of experience, I would probably look at a kid and be like, nah, if you want to train with me, you're going to have to pay. And frankly, where I'm at, I'll be like, nah, like maybe I'll give you a discount. And depending on how big their Instagram following is, maybe. But like my time is worth money and I'm going to do that. But if you are a little younger or you are really trying to hyper-focus into that high-level training element, I would think about trade as an option, not necessarily paying a kid.
It's very easy,
a bunch
right?
of money.
It's very easy, right? Like the whole premises is, hey, I want a deal from you, I want a discount from you, or I want whatever, and because I train here, I'm going to get you people, and it's very easy to be like, okay, get me people, bring people with you. We'll make it a group session, and then we can discount this all across the board. You know what I mean? So there are ways to do this where everybody wins, and at the end of the day, it's the business side that you have to take care of so that you can get to the fun part, which is training. And then at that point, it's like, oh yeah, like why are we even talking about this? This is where I want to train. This is where I want to be. But
right.
But I just thought that I would talk about that because, especially going into the summertime, I know a lot of gyms are dealing with it. I know a lot of college kids are coming home, and this is, especially for the football, basketball players, this is a conversation. So, yeah, it's a conversation that's come up for us, and I'm sure, again, this is a conversation being had all over the country.